The ballroom glittered with the golden hues of chandeliers, their lights scattering across the crowd like drops of sunshine. The air buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the faint hum of a jazz band playing in the corner. Everything was perfect, or at least it was supposed to be. I stood by the dessert table, sipping champagne that tasted sweeter than usual, basking in the glow of what I thought was the happiest day of my life. Claire, my new wife, was the picture of beauty in her lace-trimmed gown. Her auburn hair flowed down her back like a cascade of fire, her cheeks flushed from the excitement of dancing with our guests. She was laughing, her head thrown back, her hand resting lightly on the arm of one of my cousins. I felt a wave of pride. She had that effect on people, making everyone feel like the center of her universe. From across the room, I saw her glance at me, her lips curling into the soft smile she'd given me at the altar. My heart swelled. A lifetime together. This was the promise we had made only hours ago. But then, in an instant, something shattered that perfect illusion. A waiter passed by with a tray of glasses, and I moved aside to let him through. That's when I saw her, or rather, them. Through the arched doorway leading to the garden terrace, Claire stood with a man I didn't recognize. His hand rested lightly on her waist as if it belonged there, and she was leaning toward him, her face dangerously close to his. I froze, my champagne flute poised midair, my chest tightening with confusion. Surely I was imagining things. Then it happened. Their lips met in a kiss. A bolt of electricity shot through me, and I nearly dropped my glass. The world around me blurred. The laughter, the music, the sparkle of lights, all of it drowned by the roaring in my ears. My body felt rooted to the spot, my brain struggling to process the scene unfolding before me. She pulled back slightly, her hand brushing his cheek as they exchanged a look so intimate it made my stomach churn. The stranger whispered something to her, and she laughed softly, her fingers brushing her lips as if savoring the kiss. My head swam, my vision narrowing to a tunnel focused only on them. Was this some kind of mistake? A cruel joke? Or had I just witnessed my wife, the woman I had pledged to spend my life with, betray me on the very day we vowed forever? I stood there, trembling, my emotions a tempest of shock, anger, and disbelief. This wasn't real, couldn't be real, but it was. And in that moment, something inside me began to unravel. My hand clenched the delicate stem of the champagne flute so tightly I thought it might shatter. My breath came in short, ragged gasps as the scene before me burned itself into my mind. Claire, my Claire, wrapped up in someone else on the very day I vowed to cherish and protect her. Anger roared through me like a wildfire, consuming the confusion and disbelief that had momentarily paralyzed me. My feet moved before my brain could stop them, carrying me toward the terrace door. Each step felt like an eternity, the pounding of my heart drowning out the music and laughter of our oblivious guests. The terrace was bathed in the warm glow of string lights, the hum of cicadas blending with the distant sound of waves. It would have been beautiful if it weren't for the sight of my wife and this stranger, locked in what I could only describe as a lover's embrace. As I approached, Claire's laugh reached my ears, a soft, breathy sound that once had the power to lift my spirits. Now it cut through me like a jagged blade. Claire. My voice came out low and guttural, barely recognizable as my own. They broke apart instantly, Claire's eyes widening in shock as she turned to face me. The stranger, a tall man with dark hair and a smug demeanor, looked more annoyed than surprised, as if I were the one interrupting his evening. Daniel, Claire stammered, her voice trembling. She stepped toward me, her hand outstretched as though she could somehow erase what I'd seen. I can explain. Explain, I barked, my voice rising. Explain what? That I just watched my wife, the woman I married hours ago, kiss another man. Her hand froze midair, and her face paled. It's not what it looks like, she whispered, but the crack in her voice betrayed her fear. Oh, it's exactly what it looks like. My gaze shifted to the stranger, who stood with his hands in his pockets. His lips curled into a smirk that made my blood boil. Who the hell are you? The man shrugged, his nonchalance only fanning the flames of my fury. "A friend," he said casually, as if his presence here was the most natural thing in the world. "A friend," I snarled, stepping closer to him. "Do friends kiss like that?" Claire stepped between us, her hands on my chest, trying to push me back. "Daniel, please calm down. Let's go somewhere and talk." But I wasn't listening. My focus was locked on the man who had the audacity to kiss my wife, here on my wedding day. Without thinking, I pushed past Claire and swung my fist. The impact was satisfying, a solid crunch as my knuckles connected with his jaw. The man stumbled backward, crashing into the terrace railing before slumping to the ground. "Daniel, stop!" Claire cried, grabbing my arm, but I shook her off. "Is this what you wanted?" I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. "To humiliate me? To make a fool of me in front of everyone?" Claire's lips quivered, tears pooling in her eyes. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "Didn't mean for what to happen?" I demanded, my voice echoing across the terrace. "You didn't mean for me to find out?" The man groaned, sitting up and rubbing his jaw. "You've got one hell of a temper," he muttered, still smirking despite the bruise already forming on his face. "And you've got one hell of a death wish." I shot back, clenching my fists. The tension between us crackled like static electricity, but before I could do anything more, the sound of approaching footsteps reached us. Someone had seen the commotion and was coming to investigate. Claire looked at me, her face a mixture of panic and desperation. "Daniel, please," she begged, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't do this. Not here, not like this." But it was too late. The fire within me demanded release, and I was about to take the stage. Not to celebrate, but to expose the truth. The footsteps quickened, and the voices of guests grew louder as they approached the terrace. My chest heaved as I glared at Claire and the stranger, my anger far from spent. The moment was too big, too vile, to let it slink away into the shadows of whispers and rumors. No, the truth needed to come out. All of it. Without a word, I turned on my heel and strode back inside. My blood thrummed in my ears, drowning out the sound of Claire calling my name. The grand ballroom stretched before me, filled with laughter, music, and clinking glasses. Everything was a mockery of the happiness I thought I'd built. I reached the stage where the band played, my movements so determined that they paused mid-song, the trombone player freezing with his instrument halfway to his lips. Heads turned toward me, confusion etched on every face. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice amplified by the microphone I snatched from the singer's stand. The room fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, their collective curiosity sharpening my anger into something ice-cold and cutting. Claire burst through the door behind me, her tear-streaked face pale as she realized what I was about to do. She darted toward the stage, but I held up a hand, silencing her in her tracks. "Ladies and gentlemen," I repeated, my voice steady now, ringing with a clarity I didn't feel inside. "I have something I need to share with you all. Something I never imagined I'd have to say, least of all on my wedding day." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few people began whispering, but I pressed on. This woman, my wife, Claire, who stood beside me at the altar today and promised to love, honor, and cherish me, just betrayed me. I pointed toward her, my finger trembling with rage. Not hours ago, out on the terrace, I saw her kissing another man. The room erupted in shocked murmurs, a wave of disbelief washing over the guests. Claire's hands flew to her mouth, her wide eyes darting from me to the crowd as if searching for a way to undo the moment. "It's not true," she cried, her voice breaking. "Daniel, stop this. Don't lie to me, Claire." I roared into the microphone, the raw emotion in my voice silencing her protests. "I saw you, with my own eyes. And let's not forget him." I gestured toward the terrace doors, where the man was now walking in, his jaw bruised and his expression smug despite the circumstances. His appearance sent a fresh ripple of gasps through the crowd. "Who is he?" someone shouted from the back. Her friend, apparently? I said bitterly, my lips twisting around the word. A friend she thought was worth humiliating me for on the day we pledged our lives to each other. The crowd's whispers turned to outright murmurs of disapproval, their eyes swinging between Claire and the man like a tennis match. Some of our friends and family began to stand, their faces a mix of disbelief and disgust. Claire stepped onto the stage, her voice trembling as she addressed the crowd. Everyone, please, this isn't what it looks like. It's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I snapped, turning to face her. So what I saw, your lips on his, was my imagination? Or are you just upset that I caught you? Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head, her voice cracking. I was confused, Daniel. It meant nothing, I swear. I don't know what came over me. The stranger chuckled, his arrogance cutting through the tension. Funny, you didn't seem confused when I kissed you, he said, loud enough for the nearest guests to hear. A fresh wave of gasps swept through the crowd, and Claire turned on him, her face a mask of fury and betrayal. Shut up, she hissed, her voice trembling with panic. Why, Claire? I asked, my voice quieter now but no less intense. The question hung in the air like a blade, sharp and accusing. Why would you do this to me? To us? Her lips quivered, but no answer came. In the silence, I heard someone near the front of the room say, "It's not the first time, is it?" I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Slowly, I turned to the speaker. An older woman from Claire's side of the family, her face hard with disapproval. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. The woman glanced at Claire, her expression dripping with contempt. "I didn't want to believe it when I heard the rumors," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "But maybe I should have said something sooner." The room erupted again, the murmurs and whispers now a deafening storm of voices. Claire's sobs grew louder, but I didn't care. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was crumbling. And this was only the beginning. The storm of voices in the room was deafening. Questions and accusations flew like arrows, piercing what little composure I had left. My chest felt tight, my breath short, as I processed the old woman's words. "Rumors," I demanded, stepping closer to the edge of the stage, gripping the microphone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "What rumors?" The woman folded her arms, her expression unyielding. "About Claire and other men." My vision tunneled, my focus narrowing to Claire as if she were the only other person in the room. Her face, already streaked with tears, was now a mask of horror. She shook her head violently, her voice rising above the din. "She's lying," Claire cried, her voice shrill and desperate. "Daniel, don't listen to her. She doesn't know what she's talking about." "Then explain it, Claire," I thundered, the microphone amplifying my demand until it echoed off the ballroom walls. "Explain the kiss. Explain the rumors. Explain why someone would even think to say something like that about you." Claire opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her shoulders slumped as fresh sobs racked her body. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. And then he spoke. "She doesn't need to explain anything," the stranger said, stepping into the light of the stage. His voice dripped with smugness, the audacity of his tone enough to send another wave of rage coursing through me. "The truth is right here, in front of everyone." The crowd gasped again, a collective intake of breath that seemed to suck the oxygen from the room. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, pointing a trembling finger at him. He smirked, clearly reveling in the chaos. "The name's Eric," he said. "But honestly, does it matter? I'm just the guy who gave Claire what she wanted when you couldn't." The words hit me like a sledgehammer, the insinuation twisting my stomach into knots. The crowd erupted into a mixture of shocked cries and murmurs. Claire spun on him, her face contorted with fury. "Eric, stop it!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "You're making it worse." "Oh, am I?" Eric shot back, folding his arms as he turned to face her. "Because let's not forget, Claire, You didn't seem too worried about making it worse when you were sneaking off with me before your engagement. Time seemed to freeze. The words hung in the air like a poisonous cloud, choking the room into silence. My mind reeled, my knees weak, as the implications of what he'd just said sank in. Before the engagement? I repeated, my voice trembling. You were cheating on me before we even got married?
No.
It wasn't like that, Claire wailed, her hands reaching out toward me as if she could pull me back from the edge of my fury. Daniel, please. He's twisting things. It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything? I echoed, my voice rising. You mean to tell me you stood there, looked me in the eye, and promised to spend the rest of your life with me while this— I gestured at Eric, who wore his smirk like a badge of honor— was happening behind my back? Daniel, I love you, Claire sobbed, collapsing to her knees in front of me. It was a mistake. Just a stupid mistake. I swear it's over. Over. The word rattled around in my head, hollow and meaningless. Over? How could something like this ever truly be over? From the crowd, someone shouted, "She doesn't deserve you, Daniel." Another voice chimed in, "What kind of woman does this on her wedding day?" The crowd was turning against her, the tide of sympathy washing away as the full weight of her betrayal came to light. But none of that mattered to me. The noise of the guests faded into a dull hum as I stared down at Claire, her tear-streaked face tilted upward, pleading for forgiveness. "You don't get to call it a mistake," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You don't get to decide that this—" I waved a hand at the chaos around us— "is something we can just move past." Her sobs grew louder, her head dropping into her hands. Eric, still smirking, leaned casually against the edge of the stage as if this were all some kind of game. It wasn't a game. It was my life. And in that moment, I realized it was a life I could no longer share with her. Claire's sobs filled the void left by the crowd's stunned silence. She clutched at the hem of my jacket, her tears soaking into the fabric as she begged, "Please, Daniel, don't do this. Don't end us like this. I made a mistake, but it doesn't have to mean the end." I stared down at her, my chest tightening with the weight of her words. This woman, who had stood beside me hours ago as we exchanged vows, was now on her knees in front of me, shattered and pleading. But I couldn't feel pity anymore. "What's left to end, Claire?" I said, my voice low but carrying the sharpness of a blade. "You ended us the moment you chose him." My words hit her like a physical blow. She crumpled further, shaking her head furiously. "No, no. It's not like that. He doesn't mean anything to me. You're my husband. I love you." "Love?" I barked a bitter laugh, pulling my arm from her grasp. "You don't betray someone you love. You don't humiliate them in front of their family and friends. Whatever this is, Claire, it isn't love." Eric, still leaning against the stage like a villain enjoying his moment of triumph, decided to chime in. "You're taking this a little personally, don't you think?" he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "It's not like she hasn't been keeping you happy too, right?" I snapped. In one stride, I closed the distance between us and grabbed him by the collar. His smirk vanished as I lifted him onto his toes, my fists trembling with barely contained rage. "Do you think this is funny?" I hissed, my voice low enough that only he could hear. "Do you think ruining someone's life is a joke?" "Hey, man," he stammered, his earlier bravado fading. "It's not like she didn't want it." My fist collided with his face for the second time that night, sending him sprawling backward into a cluster of chairs. Gasps erupted from the crowd as a few guests moved to help him, but no one dared get between us. I stepped back, my chest heaving, and turned my attention back to Claire. She was still kneeling, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice broken. "Please, please don't do this in front of everyone. Let's talk. Just you and me. We can fix this." "There's nothing left to fix," I said coldly, the weight of finality settling over me. But before I could step down from the stage, another voice cut through the air. "I think we all deserve some answers." I turned toward the source of the voice, My best man, Peter, standing near the front of the crowd. His arms were crossed. His face a mask of anger and confusion. Daniel's not the only one you owe an explanation, Claire, he said. You've lied to all of us. To your family, to your friends. Don't you think we deserve to know the truth? The room buzzed with murmurs of agreement. Guests who had come to celebrate love and commitment now demanded an account of the betrayal they had witnessed. Claire's head snapped up, her eyes darting wildly around the room. This is between Daniel and me, she cried. Please, everyone, just go. This is private. Private, I spat. You made it public the moment you kissed him in full view of everyone here. The tension in the room was unbearable. I could feel the stares, the judgment, the pity directed at me. And then, a woman's voice rang out. Someone from her side of the family. Claire, the woman said, her tone icy. Tell him how long it's been going on. Claire froze. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no words came out. Answer her, I demanded, my voice shaking. How long, Claire? How long have you been lying to me? Her lips quivered, and finally, she whispered, since last year. The words hit me like a freight train. The room seemed to tilt, the floor beneath me shifting like quicksand. A full year. A year of lies. A year of sleeping beside someone who looked me in the eye and swore she loved me. I stepped back, shaking my head. I can't do this, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. But before I could leave, Claire surged to her feet and grabbed my arm. Daniel, don't walk away, she cried, her voice raw with desperation. Don't let this be the end. I wrenched my arm free, my voice cracking as I said, it is the end, Claire, and it's all because of you. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Guests murmured and shouted in equal measure, their voices clashing like a storm. Some tried to calm the tension, while others gawked at the scene, their expressions a mixture of shock and morbid fascination. Claire stood frozen on the stage, her mascara streaking down her face in dark rivulets, her hands trembling at her sides. Eric had slunk into a chair near the back, wiping blood from his split lip with a cocktail napkin, clearly regretting his earlier smirking bravado. I turned to leave the stage, my emotions raw, but Peter stopped me. He grabbed my shoulder firmly, forcing me to look at him. Daniel, he said, his voice low but intense. You can't let this end without making her face the truth. Asterisk all asterisk of it. You owe that to yourself. I've heard enough, I muttered, shaking my head. What more is there to say? Peter glanced at Claire, who stood trembling under the weight of 100 stares. Then he fixed his gaze back on me. That woman has lied to you for over a year. She's lied to all of us. She doesn't get to walk away without answering for it. The fury bubbling inside me reignited, and I turned back to Claire. She flinched as I stepped toward her, her wide eyes filled with panic. Let's hear it, Claire, I said, my voice cold and sharp. You want to fix this? Start by telling the truth. No more lies, no more excuses. Tell me, and everyone else here, why you did it. The room fell deathly silent. All eyes were on Claire as she stood on the stage, her hands clenched into fists. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Go on, I pressed, my anger laced with bitterness. Tell them why the vows you made today didn't mean a damn thing to you. Tears streamed down her face as she finally whispered, I was scared. Scared, I repeated, my voice rising. Scared of what, Claire? Scared of what, exactly? Her voice cracked as she said, scared of failing you. Scared I wasn't enough. Scared that one day you'd stop loving me. The words hit me like a slap, but instead of softening me, they only fueled my anger. So your solution, I said, my voice dripping with venom, was to betray me? To cheat on me? To lie to my face for a year? It wasn't supposed to happen, she cried, her voice desperate. Eric, he was there when I was feeling vulnerable and it got out of control. Eric snorted from his chair, clearly unimpressed by her attempt to minimize his role. Don't make me the bad guy, he said, leaning back with a smug smirk. You didn't exactly push me away, Claire. A fresh wave of gasps swept through the crowd, and Claire whirled on him, her face twisted with rage. Shut up, Eric. You've done enough. Done enough? He shot back, his tone mocking. I think I've done plenty. In fact, I'd say I gave you exactly what you were looking for. Wouldn't you agree? The crowd's whispers grew louder, rippling through the room like a tidal wave. People I had once considered friends were turning to each other, muttering words I couldn't quite make out. I could feel their pity, their judgment, their disbelief. But none of that mattered. All I could see was Claire, her lies, her tears, her betrayal. You didn't just fail me, I said, my voice cutting through the noise like a knife. You failed us. You failed our future, the life we were supposed to build together. And for what? For him. Daniel, please, she sobbed, taking a step closer to me. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I don't know why I did what I did, but I swear it's over. I swear I can make this right. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed through the room. You can't make this right, Claire. You can't take back what you did. And I can't forgive it. Her sobs grew louder, her hands clutching at her face as if she could block out the weight of my words. But I wasn't done. Do you know what the worst part of this is? I said, my voice trembling with emotion. It's not even the betrayal. It's the fact that I thought I knew you, that I believed you were someone I could trust, someone I could build my life with. But I was wrong. I didn't marry the woman I thought I knew. I married a stranger. The silence that followed was deafening. Claire collapsed onto the stage, her body racked with sobs. The guests were frozen, their faces a mixture of shock and discomfort. I straightened my jacket, my decision crystal clear in my mind. This marriage is over, I said, my voice steady and firm. And so are we. Without another word, I walked off the stage, leaving Claire and the wreckage of our wedding behind me. As I stepped off the stage, the weight of what I'd just done pressed down on me. My feet felt heavy, the room a blur of murmuring voices and stunned faces. Guests shifted awkwardly, some whispering behind their hands, others openly gawking at the spectacle. I walked toward the exit, needing to get away from the suffocating air of the ballroom, from the betrayal, from her. Claire's sobs still echoed behind me, but I didn't turn back. Daniel, wait, Peter called, hurrying after me. He caught up as I reached the grand doorway, his face etched with concern. What now? Are you going to just leave like this? What else is there to do? I replied, my voice low, raw. The wedding's over. The marriage is over. There's nothing left to say. Peter sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, man, I get it. She screwed up big time. But you need to take a breath. You can't let her walk away without dealing with the fallout. I turned to him, the anger bubbling to the surface again. I'm not the one walking away. She's the one who threw everything away. She'll deal with the fallout when the divorce papers hit her desk. Peter's eyes widened, but he nodded slowly. Okay, if that's what you've decided, I've got your back. Just don't disappear, all right? You're going to need people to lean on after this. His words barely registered. All I could think about was the image of Claire on the terrace, her lips pressed to another man's, her betrayal replaying in my mind like a haunting refrain. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped into the cool night air. The quiet outside was jarring after the chaos of the ballroom. The distant sound of waves crashing against the shore mixed with the faint hum of crickets, a stark contrast to the storm raging in my chest. I took a deep breath, the salty air burning my lungs, and clenched my fists. This was supposed to be the beginning of something beautiful, a new chapter, a life of shared dreams. Instead, it had turned into a nightmare. Somewhere behind me, the muffled sounds of the wedding continued. I could imagine the guests still buzzing, some leaving early, others staying to pick apart the wreckage of the night over champagne. I walked toward my car, each step feeling heavier than the last. Claire's pleas, her tears, her desperate attempts to salvage what she destroyed clung to me like a weight I couldn't shake. As I reached the car, I paused, leaning against the door. My reflection stared back at me from the window, tired, angry, defeated. The man who had started this day brimming with hope and love was gone. And in his place was someone I barely recognized. I slid into the driver's seat of my car, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't start the engine. My mind was too tangled in the chaos of the night. Claire's betrayal, the smugness of Eric, the gasps of our guests. And then there was the woman, Claire's family member, who had mentioned rumors. Her words replayed in my mind, nagging at me like a splinter under the skin. How long had people known? How many had whispered behind my back while I stood there, oblivious, playing the role of the adoring husband? A sharp knock on the window startled me. I looked up to see Claire's cousin, Maggie, standing outside. Her expression was hesitant, but there was a flicker of determination in her eyes. I rolled down the window. "What do you want, Maggie?" I asked, my voice flat. "Can we talk?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder as if worried someone might overhear. "It's important." I hesitated, then unlocked the door. She slid into the passenger seat, wringing her hands nervously. "I need you to know I didn't come here to defend her," Maggie began, her voice low. "What Claire did tonight was disgusting, and there's no excuse for it. But there's something else you need to know." I turned to face her fully, my pulse quickening. "What are you talking about?" Maggie took a deep breath. "She's been seeing Eric for over a year. That much is true. But Daniel, Eric wasn't the first." My stomach dropped. The car suddenly felt suffocating. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice tight. "She's done this before," Maggie admitted, her words tumbling out in a rush. "With other men." I didn't want to believe it when I first heard. But there were whispers. Her work trips, her late nights. "I think she's been unfaithful for most of your relationship." Her words slammed into me like a freight train. The air seemed to vanish, and I struggled to breathe. "You knew," I said, my voice rising. "You knew this was happening, and you didn't tell me?" "I didn't know for sure," Maggie said, her voice cracking. "I suspected, but every time I confronted her, she denied it. She swore up and down that she'd never hurt you." I wanted to believe her. The betrayal deepened. Not only had Claire lied to me, but the people closest to her had suspected all along. And I'd been left in the dark. "What about tonight?" I asked bitterly. "Why speak up now?" "Because I saw the way she looked at Eric," Maggie said softly. "And I realized she wasn't sorry, Daniel. She didn't feel guilty. She felt exposed. That's when I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore." I leaned back in my seat, staring at the ceiling of the car. My hands shook as I tried to process what I'd just learned. "You deserve to know the truth," Maggie continued, her voice trembling. "You deserve better than this." I let her words sink in, the weight of them crushing me. The foundation of my marriage, my life, had been nothing but a lie. "I don't know who I hate more," I muttered. "Her or myself for not seeing it sooner." Maggie reached out, placing a tentative hand on my arm. "This isn't your fault, Daniel. You loved her. You trusted her. That's not a weakness. It's proof of the kind of man you are." Her words offered little comfort, but they planted a seed. Maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild from the ashes. Maggie left the car shortly after, her parting words echoing in my mind. "You deserve better than this," but her revelations had only deepened the wound, turning what I thought was a single act of betrayal into a web of deceit stretching back years. I sat there, staring out into the night. The salty tang of the ocean drifted through the open window, a stark contrast to the bitterness clawing at my throat. I had built a life with Claire, trusting her implicitly. How much of it had been real? Unable to sit idle, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my saved emails. I found the login for the shared account Claire and I used to book trips and manage our household schedule. Logging in felt invasive, but if Maggie was right, then I couldn't trust anything Claire had told me. I sifted through months of messages, invoices, and confirmations. My heart sank as patterns began to emerge. Hotels booked in cities where Claire claimed to be working late, unexplained charges on our credit card, and strange gaps in her calendar that I had brushed off as her being busy. Each new piece of evidence was like a knife twisting in my gut. My hands trembled as I opened an email titled "Thank you for staying with us." From a boutique in 2 hours away. A stay booked for 2 guests on a weekend when she told me she was at a conference. My chest tightened, and I slammed the phone down on the dashboard, anger and pain warring within me. It wasn't just Eric. It had never been just Eric. Claire had built an entire second life behind my back. I stared at the dashboard, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. This wasn't a marriage. It was a lie. A beautifully constructed illusion that had come crashing down in the span of a single evening. And I was done with it. The fury bubbling inside me demanded an outlet. The pieces were all there now. Maggie's confession, the damning emails, the lies Claire had spun so effortlessly. I couldn't leave without confronting her one last time. Slamming the car door, I marched back toward the ballroom. The chill of the night air did little to temper the fire burning in my chest. Inside, the scene was quieter but no less tense. Many guests had left, but a few remained, lingering in clusters, whispering in hushed tones. Claire sat near the edge of the stage, her tear-streaked face hidden behind trembling hands. Her once perfect wedding gown was wrinkled and smudged, a far cry from the elegant image she'd projected hours earlier. She looked up as I approached, her eyes widening in fear. "Daniel," she started, but I cut her off. "No more excuses, Claire," I said, my voice sharp and unyielding. "No more lies. I know about Eric and I know about the others." Her breath caught, and she shook her head, her face crumbling. "Others? What are you talking about? Daniel, please. Don't," I snapped, stepping closer. "Don't you dare stand there and deny it. The hotels, the fake conferences, the secrets you thought I'd never find out about. They're all right here." I held up my phone, the emails open like a spotlight on her deceit. Her face turned ghostly pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What way did you mean for it to happen, Claire?" I demanded, my voice trembling with restrained fury. "Were you ever going to tell me? Or were you just going to keep lying until I was too blind or too broken to care?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she reached for me, but I stepped back, the gesture cutting deeper than any words. "I trusted you," I said, my voice breaking. "I gave you everything I had, and this is how you repay me?" Her sobs filled the silence, but I turned away, unable to look at her any longer. I didn't wait for her to respond. There was nothing left to say. Her sobs followed me as I walked out of the ballroom, through the gaudy remnants of our shattered celebration. The weight on my chest was unbearable, but with each step, a small part of me felt lighter, freer. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I could breathe. I stood still, staring at the dark waves in the distance, their rhythm steady, indifferent to the chaos that had unfolded tonight. This was it, the end of everything I thought my life would be. But as painful as it was, I knew there was no going back. There was no salvaging the wreckage of this marriage, no gluing the pieces together to make it whole again. Maggie's words echoed in my head. "You deserve better than this." She was right. For too long, I'd convinced myself that Claire was my world, that every sacrifice I made for her, every ounce of trust one gave her, was worth it. But tonight had stripped away the illusions, exposing the bitter truth. The woman I loved didn't exist. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my wedding ring. The band felt heavier than it ever had, as if it carried the weight of every lie, every betrayal. I turned it over in my fingers one last time before flinging it into the night. It disappeared into the dark, swallowed by the waves. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out. It was a text from Peter. "You okay?" I typed back, *, not yet. "But I will be, *. The words felt strange but oddly comforting. I wasn't okay, not by a long shot. But I knew this wasn't the end for me. It was the beginning of something new. A chance to rebuild, to find someone who truly valued me, or maybe just to focus on myself for once. As I drove away from the venue, the road stretched ahead like an open canvas, waiting to be filled with something better. Claire's betrayal would scar me, but it wouldn't define me. Somewhere out there was a life that didn't include lies, heartbreak, or the constant ache of betrayal, and I was ready to find it. For the first time in hours, I let out a shaky breath and whispered into the quiet, "Goodbye, Claire." And with that, I left her and the pain behind.